A mitzvah to be holy in this week's parsha. What's meant to be holy? What does it mean to be holy? Okay, let's see. First we'll learn Rashi's pshat, how it applies to us, and then the pshat of the Ramban.
What's the parsha for this week?
This is Acharei Kedoshim. It's a double parsha.
Terry loves doubles.
So this is the beginning of the second parsha. It says, Rashi writes, Kedoshim tiyu have prushim min arayos. Being holy means to separate yourself from illicit relationships, from acts of sexual immorality. But we know that we have to do that. But the novel idea here is that doing that makes you holy.
Really?
Doing that makes you holy. Not giving in to every sexual urge that a person has makes that person holy. That's what Rashi says.
I would never think of having a illicit relationship. Never.
Well, right. That's good. That's very good. Shalom. That's very good. But it also applies, we'll find out there's different levels, right? There's the actual illicit relationships, and then there are many, what we call siyagim, many protections in the Torah and amongst the rabbis to guard from that happening. For example, being secluded alone with a woman that we're not related to or not our spouse, or listening or watching inappropriate things or looking at inappropriate pictures. It doesn't just mean pornography. It means like, even looking at one isn't supposed to even look at a woman for enjoyment. Right. So that would be included in that also. So there's many levels, and also even listening to a woman sing, because that could make a person excited. So Rashi writes, Shekol makom she'ata motzi geder erva. Anytime we find a fence to erva, to immorality, ata motzi kedusha, you find holiness. So the more people separate from these types of things, the holier they are. Now, we're not like the Catholics who believe there's a Mila, there's an advantage in being celibate. We don't believe in that at all, because we're human. We get married. We need to get married. But Judaism is a very sober religion, because we do it in a balanced way. You get married to one person, to one woman. You don't go around your whole life, doing whatever. Right? Also, there's a pasuk in Devarim. It says, Ki Hashem Elokecha mithalach b'kerev machanecha. Hashem goes in your camp, l'hatzilcha, to save you, v'laseis oivecha lefanecha, and to give your enemies that they should fall in front of you, v'yamechanecha kadosh, and your camp will be holy, v'l'yir b'cha ervas davar, v'shav mecharecha, that you won't see any immorality, and that He will turn away from you. So when does Hashem turn away from us? When there is erva, when there is inappropriate relationships going on, and things like that. So we want to know sometimes where it seems that Hashem is allowing bad things to happen to the Jewish people. So the pasuk says that one reason that Hashem takes away from protecting the Jewish people, takes away His from guarding us, is when there's acts of immorality going on.
David, how come the Holocaust happened?
That is a great question. That is way beyond anything I could say right now. But I would love to talk with you about it at a different time, because it can't be answered in the amount of time. This year is only 20 minutes long, and I think it would take more than that to answer it. Okay. Also, an interesting thing is that the arayos, acts of immorality, and doing these things like we said, it's called tumah. It's called impurity. Now, that means tumah is a little bit of a difference between tumah and other types of sins. A sin that also what's called tumah is eating non-kosher.
Right.
So why these two things? What is it about these two things, that inappropriate relationships and eating non-kosher is impurity? What does it mean, impurity? So it says it's metamtem es halev. What it does is that every person has a certain sensitivity to spirituality. Right? You could have two people walk into shul, and one person feels inspired, he's connecting with Hashem, and he just is filled with joy. You could have another guy who walks into shul, he doesn't feel anything. He might as well be in a bar. He doesn't perceive it. So what it says here, when something is tameh, is impure, when we do these things, it creates timtum and leiv. What it does is it makes a barrier in the heart that prevents a person from being sensitive to holiness. So the more a person engages in non-kosher food, eating non-kosher food, being involved in acts of immorality, that creates a barrier between him and God that makes him less perceptible and less sensitive to spirituality.
If you eat non-kosher food, what can you do to counteract that?
You can do teshuvah. You can feel bad about what you did. You can tell Hashem the avera you did, and you promise you're not going to do it again.
See, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I eat non-kosher food sometimes, and I do feel bad.
So try your best to improve. Maybe one thing at a time you could cut out. Meaning, maybe take it slow. Take one thing that you feel you can handle, and don't eat that thing. And take it in slow steps.
Burgers anymore.
That you don't do. That you don't.
I did that when I was a kid.
We've all done things we regret. Nobody's perfect, but as long as you're moving up, that's all. As long as you're moving in the right direction.
Offense or a barrier to your heart. You're also damaging your neshama by eating that.
Right? No, you're damaging your neshama. But what's the additional aspect of this avera opposed to other averas is that it makes us less sensitive to spirituality, which is horrible because. Right, it could ruin your whole spiritual life. You'll be that guy that comes in shul that's not really feeling it. You learn Torah, you're not feeling it. It's not connecting with you. So it's something to watch out for. So that's what Rashi says when it says Kedoshim Tiyu. He says Jewish people have to be holy. How do you be holy? Distance yourself from illicit relationships. Now the Ramban says a different pshat. He says Aval b'tzaris kahanim reisi stam prushim tiyu. You should be separate. It says. Holy means being separate. We'll see what that means. He's right. He kadosh and he kishemesh and he kadosh. He says it doesn't mean just separating from acts of immorality, like Rashi said. Separation here means like it says in the entire Talmud. So he says like this: the Torah forbids illicit relationships. The Torah forbids eating non-kosher food. However, we're allowed to eat meat and wine, and we're allowed to have relations with our wives. So he says like this: if so, Yamatse Bala Taiva, Makam Lios, Shotaf Zimas, Ishto, O Nashav Harbos, right? Uvalios Besoviyai was only Basar, Lam Vidaber Katsona, Becholana Velo, Shalohusker, Isser Zebatora. You could have a guy that all he does with his life is he has relations with his wife, totally allowed, and he stuffs his face all day with kosher food. He goes to every kosher buffet he could find, and he just eats all day, and that's how he spends his life. Did he violate anything in the Torah? Technically, no. And he could talk about inappropriate things, and he didn't technically violate a prohibition in the Torah. V'ini novel b'rshus Torah. This is Ramban's famous line. He says he's a novel b'rshus Torah. He's like a disgusting fellow, but within the confines of the Torah. Lefikach, therefore, boha kasav acharei shepar ha'isurim she'asrosam legamri v'tziva b'davar klali shida prusha mina mosaris yima'at v'mishkol ke'inin she'amru shelo yeh talmid decham mitzuyin etzem l'Hashem kedan ha'goyim v'l'shamish elakfi tzorach v'kil mitzvos v'mena v'yikadosh atz v'minyan v'miyuto. He says, therefore, since technically you could follow all of the laws in the Torah and you could still be a disgusting, horrible person because you spend all your life having relations, right? You could have more than one wife. Back in the day, you could have several wives. So what does this guy do? He gets up in the morning.
The only problem with several wives is several mother-in-laws.
Well, yeah, I hear that. So he could.
The Muslims are big on that, right? They have several.
Yeah, they still do that. Well, Jews don't do that anymore, but that's only a rabbinic enactment. According to Torah law, it could still happen. So technically, according to Torah law, you could get up, you could drive to Bagel Nash, order a ton of food at Bagel Nash, and you go home, you have relations with all your wives, then for lunch you go to Mike's Chicken and you just eat a ton of chicken, and then you go home in the afternoon and you just go back and you have more relations with your wife and you go schmooze with people, and then for dinner, I don't know, you go to Salt and Deal and just have tons and tons of steak. And that's how you spend every day of your life. Did you violate any Torah prohibitions? No. However, this is what the Ramban calls a novel b'rshus Torah. It's like a detestable person within the confines of the Torah. So it comes this week's parsha and says, Kedoshim Tiyu. Hashem says you should be holy. What does it mean to be holy? It means you should separate yourself even from things that are technically allowed. Meaning, even though that technically it is allowed to do all the things that we just mentioned, that's not a Jewish thing to do. A Jewish thing to do is we eat in moderation, we have relations in moderation, and we focus, and we study Torah. The focus of our lives should be on our neshama, on our souls, and not our bodies. Right. That's what it means. Kedoshim Tiyu, be holy. You can't focus on your soul if you're constantly focusing on your body. Listen, I enjoy good food as much as the next guy. But there's certain people, well, I don't do this because they can't afford it, but they go to like super fancy restaurants all the time, and they check out this restaurant, that's like their whole life, is checking out the restaurants, and then which cruise they went on, and that's what they get excited about over life. And then you have, there's a Facebook page, as of a couple years ago, it's probably still there, like Great Kosher Foodies, like tens of thousands of people, and all they do is talk about kosher food. So that's like, okay,
I like going. I went to the bagel knots many times, Lonnie. I like going there.
I agree with you. It's very good. But Dennis, you're a holy guy. That's not like the purpose of your life. The purpose of your life isn't bagel nosh. And you know what? You'll say, you know what? I'm not going to stuff myself with so many home fries. I'm going to have a bagel and some eggs in moderation. Because in order to be a holy person, the Ramban says we have to refrain even from things which are technically allowed.
Salmon, if you eat salmon, that's okay.
Yep, salmon is good. It's very healthy. Unless it's mercury. Is mercury in salmon? No.
They say if you eat anything from the sea, too much already from the sea.
Right. Right. But this isn't for health. This is for our spiritual health. Not only is stuffing yourself with food bad for your physical health, it's also bad for your spiritual health. There's a Taisus he brings down. He says if you want, one of the things to be successful in Torah, it says you have to miyat tainug. You have to minimize pleasure. Now, it says minimize. It doesn't say eliminate. Again, we're not Catholics. We don't believe that you should go and fast and live on a mountain and just pray all day. We do not believe you should be doing that. What we believe is you should be eating good foods, but in moderation. Maybe you don't eat till you're totally stuffed. You eat till whatever. You don't have to spend a ton of money on fancy foods. Because why? Because why am I eating? I'm eating. I want to be happy and serve Hashem. I'm happy when I eat good foods in moderation, and that my real focus is the neshama, the soul. That's what we were talking about a few weeks ago. What's the locus? What's the focus of us? Where do we focus? There's different parts of us, right? Who am I? Very deep philosophical question. Am I my body? Am I my soul? Right? We have these aspects to us. So we were discussing that the challenge of a Jew, what a Jew is supposed to be, that the focus, the I, where he identifies himself, is his neshama. That's what he lives for. He lives for spirituality. There's a medrash, I think it's a medrash. Hillel said he would wash his body in the morning just like he would feed his horse. I mean, he was doing a chesed because he was such a spiritual person. He didn't even identify himself with his body. He totally identified with his neshama, and his body was just there to carry. He needed his body to carry him along, so he would do a kindness to his body by cleaning it. My Rosh Yeshiva said about Rav Aaron Leib Steinman, was a big rabbi who passed away several years ago. He said the same thing. He said you would look at him, his body was like he was riding a horse, or like driving a car. Like he wasn't his body. That's what we have to focus on. If you ever get a chance, I would recommend reading the beginning, or the whole thing really. But Menashe, you have to read this. They translate in English also. The Hebrew is very, very hard. I have a lot of trouble with it, but they translate in English. The Chazon Ish Emunim Bitachon. You ever learned it before? Tell your baby you want to learn with them. It will change your life. So he writes, this is something we talked about also, faith in Hashem. He says, faith in Hashem is obvious to everybody, just that our physical drives and other things get in the way. But he says, and it's midas emunahi netiya daka madinas hanefesh. He says, emuna, faith in Hashem, is a very fine point of the soul. And he says, somebody who is content and he's free from outside desires for physical pleasure, the faith in Hashem comes automatically. He doesn't have to sit there and think of proofs to God's existence. What the Chazon Ish is saying, a profound insight. When you have a person who's worked on his character traits, right, to the point, look at Rabbi Leiter. You have a point that someone worked on their character traits where they can sit with equanimity and they're not bothered. They don't have these constant drives. Oh, I have to go eat this now. I have to do this now. They're just at peace with themselves. The knowledge of Hashem automatically descends upon them. Beautiful, as he says. And he said
I like going to the fish grill sometimes for lunch.
Oh, fish isn't my thing, but hey, you're right. We're saying we're good food, but you just go because it's good food, right? No, it's kosher, and you wanna use it to serve Hashem. But you don't go on Facebook about it, posting after because food is the most important thing in my life.
No, of course not.
Okay, and the Chazon Ish says something very interesting also. He says once you make Hashem the focus of your life and you keep working on it,
right,
you don't have to the other stuff, right? Let's say working on I don't want to be about taiva. I don't want to be the type of guy that's always running after hamburgers. He says when you focus on Hashem and that becomes so important to you, everything else just falls away. The other desires you have, you look back, you're like, why did I even want that? That was stupid. That was silly. Why I wanted to drive 30 minutes to get like a great steak. Like, well, it's not like
you
you're.
live, you have no choice. You want a steak?
Right, that's what I'm saying, right? But the idea is that when you connect to Hashem on such a deep level, even not such a deep level, the other things fall away, right? There's people in the shul that used to be obsessed with sports, but they got so involved with learning Torah, they just like not interested anymore. It's like it becomes like a kid's game, right? When you were a kid, maybe you loved playing with Legos. Now you look at Legos, like whatever. Okay, fine, whatever. That's not my thing. Okay, Legos are still pretty cool. Maybe I should use a different example. There's like little blocks you put in you put in the holes, like the square block and the triangle block. Yeah. So when you're a 3-year-old, that's like the most exciting thing ever. But most of us, I hope, look at that. We're like, okay, whatever. I'm not really interested in that. That's for kids. So, but you do that also with other things, like a fancy car. Okay, whatever. I don't care. That's for people.
I don't care either. I bought a Volkswagen Buck.
A German car?
I know it was German, but I bought it was cheap.
Okay, I hear that.
Back in the day, yeah.
Back in the day.
I hear So now we find.
That was the whole purpose of the designs.
Sure.
We find ourselves also in Sfira. We're not just we're counting. Last night was 25. We're not just counting. We're not just. It's not some mitzvah that every day after davening, you go Hayom Yom. There's something profound over here. It's a very holy time of year. The time between Pesach and Shavuos is very holy. The Rav Melech Biederman quoted as a Mishnah. It says, interesting Mishnah. It says, wicked people, they spend 12 months in hell after they die. Wicked people, right? Wicked people. And then Rav Yochanan ben Nuri says, no, they spend the time between Pesach and Shavuos. It's interesting. That means, why do we go to hell? Since there's a new pope today, I guess that's why I keep quoting Catholicism. But the Catholics, from what I understand, you go to hell, you're like damned forever there. It sounds pretty miserable. Well, we believe hell is a place where a person, even a wicked person, not every wicked person, but many wicked people go, and they get rectified for different sins that they may have committed. What? No, but you can't do tshuva, but a person suffering also takes away averos. And suffering takes it away.
What book would you recommend? I would like to read.
What book?
Yeah.
It's a great question. What are you interested in? We'll get back to it then?
On Torah.
On Torah? The Path of the Just is a very good book.
Oh, I got that.
Yeah, it's a good book, The Path of the Just. So Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, what? Yes. Rav Yochanan ben Nuri says you could accomplish, so the first opinion was that a wicked person goes to hell for 12 months. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says a person goes to hell just between Pesach and Shavuos. So the Chedoshim Harim says, you see from here, that you could accomplish between Pesach and Shavuos what a person could accomplish in the entire year. That means we want to grow in spirituality. We want to make the neshama the focus of our lives. During the 12 months of the year, that's going to take a lot of work. It's hard. But he says, during Pesach and Shavuos, between this time during Sfira, Hashem helps us out so that we could do even more. And actually, it's interesting, the Ramban says that Sfira that we count, it's like Chol HaMoed. Chol HaMoed, right? Those are the intermediary days of Pesach and Sukkot. They're not holidays, but they're not weekdays either. So the Ramban says that Sfira is like the intermediate days between Pesach and Shavuos. So there's a holiness in those intermediate days that can help us get close to Hashem.
You know what I did last night?
What?
I went out in the middle of the night. I did Kedoshim.
It's awesome.
I had a nice full moon.
It's a great mitzvah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It shouldn't be a full moon yet. When you get to the full moon, it's going to be too late.
So there's in the parsha. And this week's parsha, but earlier in the parsha, the interesting mitzvah. This is connected to Be'er b'nei Yisrael v'amart alayim. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am Hashem your God. K'mais eretz Mitzrayim asher yishavtem bam lo tzasu. Do not do like they did in the land of Egypt. U'k'mais eretz Canaan asher ani mevi asem sham lo tzasu b'chokoseim lo selechu. Don't do like they do in the land of Canaan, and you shall not follow in their statutes. We're not allowed to be like the nations of the world. There's a mitzvah and a prohibition. Don't be like the mitzvah of the world. So don't be like the nations of the world. That sounds very racist, but it's not. Maybe it is. I'll tell you why I don't think it is. What does it mean? What's the depth of that? Just like, is this some like ethnocentric, anti-whatever, secularism?
They're idol worshippers,
Well, even now, this mitzvah still applies, but many people are not idol worshippers. The Jewish people have to remain separate. You know.
the Catholic Church, I think, are idol worshippers.
So you know why? The reason is because, like we say, the Jewish people, the center of our existence is our neshama. So we live in a different way, like we just spoke about. We live in a way where we separate ourselves from physicality. It's necessary, but that's not the focus of our lives. The focus of our lives is neshama. The secular world lives like that? No. The secular world lives the opposite. What's a neshama? They don't even believe in the neshama. The focus of their lives is the body, kinatayv and kavod. Get as much money as you can, have as much pleasure as you can. So it's impossible that a human being, when he lives in an environment with others with different values, it is impossible that he won't be influenced by that society. So there's a special mitzvah. There's a special mitzvah that we have to separate ourselves. I just want to.
think of writing a book?
I have.
That's the one that I bought. Is that the book I bought?
Could be.
And I bought 2 copies, and that was the book that you wrote.
Oh, thank you.
I have 2 copies of it.
You should buy more. Okay.
I bought a copy of your second, but I still have to find a copy.
Amazon. The Rambam writes, Ein holchem bechukos ha'oiv dikachavim v'lo medamen lahem. He says we shouldn't go in the ways of the non-Jewish nations, and we shouldn't be similar. We shouldn't imitate them. Lo b'malbush, not in the way they dress. V'lo b'seir, not even the way they cut their hair. You ever wonder why the Hasidics go with the furry hats? They want to be separate. They want to dress separate to say, we are a special nation. We believe the neshama is the focus of life. That's it. You do what you want, just leave us alone. It usually doesn't happen. Be careful, lest you get snared up by them. The Jewish people have to remain separate. We have to always remain separate. And this was always easy in Europe. Talking about the Pope. I was reading a book about the popes, the treatment of the Jews before World War II. It was horrible. But there was one advantage of living in being in the ghetto in the Papal States. The one advantage is that nobody was seduced in wanting to be like the surrounding culture, because they were disgusting to us. They kept us separate.
Same thing in Egypt.
Right. Egypt also.
They pushed us into Kedoshim.
Right. But now. So we live in an enlightened, quote-unquote, society. So it has its benefits, but also has its dangers. The advantages are that they're not killing us as much openly as they used to.
They're still killing us, though.
Right, that's what I said, as much. However...
At least now we're fighting back.
Right, however, the danger that happens is that since it's so welcoming, we tend to adopt the values of the secular world around us. And the danger of that is we could lose our mission as Jews because, again, the secular world believes power, money, and pleasure is the purpose of life. And we say, no, that's the antithesis of life, living for your neshama. So that's why we come to shul. And the Rambam says if you live in a corrupt society, you have to run to the desert. You have to run away to the desert. So the Chazon Ish, how do we do that today? We don't have deserts around. So you know what you do? You run to the Beis Medrash. You run to 364 Union Hill Road, to the Union Hill congregation, and that's where you run. That's where you run away to be separate from the nations of the world. So just to conclude, we talked about being holy. Being holy means we're focusing on our shama by separating ourselves from physical pleasures, and again, not totally abstaining from it, but rather limiting it, and through that we'll become a nation that focuses on our neshama.